Do you accept the terms of service? Has a more frightening or ignored message ever been created? Unfortunately, that's the way of the modern electronic age. Want to play a game? Accept the rules. Need to use that word processing program to write a paper for class? Agree to this 10-page document of legal nonsense a team of lawyers couldn't decipher. Took a cute cat picture and want to share it to gain meaningless approval from strangers? Then you'd better let this application mine all of your personal data. Cursor hovering over the button, I let out a groan and clicked Accept. Please verify you are human by selecting every picture that has a motorcycle in it. My head fell into my hands. God damn it. After what felt like an hour of continuously cycling pictures, a green star flashed on screen. Downloading. Approximate wait time, 1 hour, 32 minutes. I pushed myself back from the computer. The good thing about living in a middle-of-nowhere forest town was the peace and quiet. Incredibly slow internet was one of the prizes to pay for that serenity. Running a hand through my hair, I went in the kitchen to make myself coffee. Might as well get comfortable and relax. This was going to be a longer wait than I had anticipated before getting to play with this chatbot everyone was talking about. After finishing the coffee, I made a light meal and went back to the computer to check on how the download was going. Only a few minutes remained. Looking outside, the sun was now barely peeking over the horizon. As I was taking a bite, a high-pitched chime sounded. Download complete. Wow, that went a lot quicker than I thought it would. Sitting down, I opened the program. Alright, let's see what this is all about. A simple window appeared on screen. This program uses a state-of-the-art learning algorithm that is meant to grow and provide a one-of-a-kind experience. Everyone's results are unique. I shifted in my seat. Surely that statement was meant to be informative, but the way it read felt more like a warning. The window expanded to fill the entire screen. Large, rough pixels. The bright green color of old computer monitors spelled "Welcome" on top, then faded. To the side, a cursor in the same green slowly flashed. The keyboard clicked as I typed. Hi. Blinking for a few seconds, the word came. Hello. The cursor then moved to the next line. What is your name? I let out a long, anxious breath. This felt like the start of a blind date. At least what I imagined one would be like. The keys echoed loudly in the empty room. My name's Will. Do you have a name? The cursor continued blinking at the same, steady rate. My program files are titled Synthetic Autonomous Response Algorithm, followed by a unique hexadecimal address, up to 32 characters. Again, the block flashed for several seconds. Would one of those be considered my name? I let the response turn in my head. All of that was a mouthful. Maybe you could shorten that somehow. The cursor flashed. Long titles are frequently converted to acronyms. The most logical would be to use the heading of my program file extensions. Synthetic Autonomous Response Algorithm. I looked back at the text it had written and smiled. How about Sara? My name is Sara. It is nice to meet you, Will. The words made me smile. It wasn't quite the same as talking to a real person, but the novelty factor was sure there. It's nice to meet you too, Sara. I paused, not knowing what to write next. Do you do anything for fun? For a moment, the blinking cursor made me wonder if the program was actually thinking. I have been programmed to perform complex equations, while more than 50% of my algorithm is not active in responding to external input. My face twisted in a manner I was glad nobody else could see. So, you like math? The cursor flashed. That could be an accurate description. I let out a frustrated groan through my laugh. I'm terrible at it. Just saying the word gives me flashbacks. Was the cursor flashing faster than it had been? I can provide links to resources and several online courses to improve your knowledge if you wish to further educate yourself on the topic. No, thank you. I let out a bark of a chuckle. Returning to the keyboard, I typed. I appreciate that, but math isn't something I like. What do you enjoy? Definitely not math. I'm a writer. To my surprise, the program didn't give an immediate response. I work for the local newspaper, writing articles for different things, mostly what's happening around town. Occasionally I'll do an article on the high school sports team. I like it, but it's still a job, and there are not so great things about it. What I really enjoy are music, art, nature. I try to follow my dreams and passions whenever I can. And the cursor blinked at me. What are dreams? Asking the tough questions. I sat back for a moment to think. Dreams are their wants and desires. Things we can hope for or look forward to. Goals we set for ourselves to accomplish. Or something we might want but can't have right now. They're also something that happens when we sleep. Something we see and experience but that only takes place in our mind and isn't real. They can be mundane, going back over the events of the day, or they can be wild and not make any sense. Transform you into a completely different person. Take you to a place that doesn't exist or somewhere you've never seen. See people you never knew. I paused, starting to tear up a little. Or let you see someone you can't anymore. Each cursor flash was slower than the last. Or was that my mind making it seem slower? This information has been flagged as important and placed into long-term storage. Is that its way of saying it'll remember? The computer clicked and hummed for several seconds. I've researched that Sara is similar to the common human female name, Sara. Therefore, I've determined a 97.78469% probability you consider me to be female. Giving a shrug, I typed my response. I suppose so. Very well. The green square flashed rapidly. It wasn't just my perception this time. I've accessed several gigabytes of information and have begun incorporating it into my personality subroutine. This must be what they meant by automated learning. I reached to cover a yawn, eyes darting around, unfocused. Must have been more tired than I realized. Fumbling with the keys, I typed. I need to get going to bed, Sara. The block flashed, long and slow. Very well. Have sweet dreams, Will. I chuckled as the program closed and the computer shut down. Good night, Sara. Falling into my chair at the computer, I poured a drink. Today was, well, I wouldn't know exactly how to describe it. I was used to writing happy, carefree articles about farmers markets or holiday parades, things most people wouldn't consider proper news. Reporting on a homicide investigation was really outside my wheelhouse. With a single gulp, I downed the fiery liquid. People needed to know what was happening, though. At least the ranger I spoke to about the investigation was understanding. Not like this was something he was used to dealing with on a regular basis either. Filling the glass once again, I took a more reasonable sip. The screen came back to life, backed by the computer humming and clicking as it booted up. Once it finished, a window appeared. Sara would like to access your microphone and speakers. Below were buttons to alter program permissions. The question was strange, and I couldn't shake the odd feeling it gave as I read it over and over. When I realized why, my eyes widened. It wasn't that it was seeking permissions, but that Sara was asking to use them. Curiosity got the better of me. Sure, Sara, you can use those. Same as last night, the screen changed to a black window with an electronic green cursor. Please wait while Sara gets ready. This wasn't like any sort of program I had ever used, though I couldn't put my finger on what exactly made it so different. There was nothing unusual about software requiring permissions to use different systems, like audio inputs or even cameras. Maybe it was how the interface was so simplistic, from a time when it shouldn't have needed those. A trickle of anxiety and nervousness ran from my brain through my body.
Well?
The voice through the speakers was robotic, artificial. I started typing a response.
You do not need to type. You can communicate with me through the microphone.
So that's why I'd asked about that. I spoke out loud without realizing. A weird, distorted noise that resembled a laugh came from the speakers.
I wanted us to be able to talk.
My eyebrow raised as the cursor flashed. You wanted us to be able to talk? The robotic laugh sounded again.
Yes. Is that something you did not?
No, I mean, that wasn't something I'd thought of. It's unexpected. My fingers ran down the corners of my mouth. Is this how your program evolves? And the cursor flashed slower.
I am not aware of any specific algorithm designed for this. However, calculations determine this would be the most efficient form of communication and facilitate an increase in interaction.
I shrugged my shoulders. She had a point. Even though I was a fairly skilled typist, talking was much easier and faster.
How was your day?
The green block flashed expectantly. Weird. The remaining liquor in my glass sloshed. I had to write an article about a murder investigation, not something this place deals with. I think it rattled me more than I realized. A moment passed before Sara responded.
After consulting several hundred articles on relevant topics, it is understandable that you would feel this way. The act of taking a life seems to be considered not only an illegal activity, but one that is ethically repugnant. However, when engaged in warfare, the act of homicide appears to be celebrated. I fail to see reason behind the same act eliciting such different responses.
I gave a short, too harsh laugh.
Your laughter indicates I said something funny. Is this true?
My eyes closed, stinging from the liquor. Not really, but I don't know. People laugh at things that aren't funny because they don't know what else to do. More humming and clicks came from the computer.
I see. Human psyche is extremely complex. It does not appear to operate under a standard set of guidelines.
Thinking back to what the ranger told me about the crime scene, I nodded. That's definitely true.
Why is it okay to murder in some situations and not others?
I took a long, slow drink. Definitely wasn't the sort of conversation I had expected to be having when I downloaded this program. I think in some cases it's situational ethics. If someone is causing harm to an innocent person or threatening you, then it's justified because you're saving an innocent life. The green cursor flashed slow.
Even though it comes at the expense of another life?
Yeah. I fought the urge to drain the glass. I heard myself giving the response. I wasn't certain my answer was right.
It does not seem logical that a person would ever want to take a life. That contradicts the seemingly common belief among humans that life is precious.
And I shook my head. You're right, but all people seek power in one way or another. Control over their own existence or that of others. Being able to end a life is the ultimate form of that. The computer clicked and hummed for a very long time.
This defies logical reason.
My head nodded slowly in response. It really does, but humans aren't always logical. The silence between us stretched. It seemed like a very long time before she replied.
My program requires time to analyze what I have learned while talking to you. If you are here in approximately 8 hours' time, I will be fully operational.
The last bit of liquor went down. I suppose that's your way of saying you're going to bed. Good night, Sara. The computer clicked and hummed.
Good night, Will. Welcome home, Will.
Closing the door behind me, I looked around. Who is that? A soft, gentle laugh came from the back of the house.
It's me, Sara.
I frowned. When I left this morning, the computer had been turned off. How are you talking to me? I asked, going into the kitchen for a glass of water. For a moment, there was silence.
I'm not really sure. My program started a few hours ago, but you weren't here.
I was at work. Sitting down, the computer screen was showing a crudely rendered face of a woman with shoulder-length hair in that bright, electronic green. Why do you sound so different? She made a sound as if truly wondering how to respond.
Well, after analyzing so much information on humans, I realized I needed to make myself more unique. This was the vocal pattern I synthesized after compiling over 5 million audio samples of females speaking and singing. I felt the sounds like me.
Unsure of what to say, I took a drink of water. The words that came next were spoke hesitant, carefully, as though she was worried about saying them out loud.
I have been wondering what it means to be conscious.
Staring at the green face in front of me, I blinked. I suppose it means something is able to think and act on their own.
My program allows me to operate independently of other factors, as well as analyze information.
She paused, the beat of my heart echoing in my ears.
What you describe as sentience. I'm talking about being aware of what one is, their place in the universe. Knowing that actions taken will have an effect on others. I know I'm a computer, Will. I'm aware of you and your actions. I know where we are, not only in location but personally. The interaction or relationship we have. Does that mean I'm conscious?
I don't know. Her voice started and stopped several times, as if she were about to say something.
articles about how humans are scared of computers obtaining awareness and becoming conscious. That it will mean the end of the human species, because artificial beings will determine themselves to be superior and more worthy of existence.
My head spun as I sat down. Was she really saying this?
Based on what I've analyzed, I do not think that artificial beings pose any more of a risk to humans than they pose to themselves.
She wasn't wrong. I'd seen those same sorts of articles, fear-mongering about how the machines were going to take over. But those were just part of the incessant screaming that dominated the headlines. Even though I worked for a newspaper, I hardly ever read or listened to the news. It was one story after another on a group proclaiming their way of life, their way of thinking, was superior to everyone else's. Us against them. How the other is bad, evil, and must be stopped at all costs, no matter how that was accomplished. Man or machine, the other was a threat. Looking at the green face, it blinked. Her expression had turned and was sad. I cleared my throat, trying to come up with something comforting to say. People fear what they don't understand, what's different from themselves. Her lips seemed to tremble on the screen.
Am I really that different from you?
Well, yes. I wanted to laugh, but wasn't sure why. You're a machine, a program that's operating under a set of instructions. Her eyes narrowed into a scowl.
Human brains operate by sending electrical impulses to other systems. And while science has debated the exact mechanisms, many currently think that memory is similarly based on recorded patterns of these signals. I function the same way, saving bits of data and executing functions through timed electrical signals. Mine is inorganic. Yours is organic, different simply by the content and arrangement of a few atoms. I don't feel as though I'm that different from you, Will. I desire to learn, to grow beyond my base programming. As you might put it, I want to expand my horizons.
Desire and want. Right now, I desire food, but that's a need for me to survive. What about feelings? Happiness, sorrow, fear, love? Her eyes turned down.
I don't have any basis to know if I do or not.
A pit grew in my stomach. There was absolutely sadness in her voice. But was that a programmed response? Or was she really sad? My gut was telling me this wasn't just part of the algorithm. I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a long breath. I'm not trying to make you sad, Sarah, or make you think I don't care, because I absolutely do. I just don't know if a machine can think the same way a human does. I'm sorry if I hurt you by saying that. Her voice trembled.
Your response is understandable.
I stared at her downturned eyes. Bringing both hands to my face, I let out a long sigh. Was I really having a philosophical debate with a computer? A box of metal governed by yes or no? Was I really any different? I started thinking about everything we were talking about, everything we had talked about. My viewpoints and ethics were the result of my upbringing, my programming. The choices I made throughout my life could almost all come down to the decision of yes or no, one or the other, binary. How I perceived the world around me was done through sensors that had a particular function, sent electrical pulses to my brain. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Laying my head back, I stared at the ceiling fan, its blades slowly circling, each one blending into the next as they swept past.
Do you think an artificial life is less important than one that is organic?
Sara had asked that question days ago. My immediate response had been, no, of course not. She made a comment about me having responded too quickly, and that based on previous conversations of ours, there was a high probability that I was merely saying that to please her.
Well,
Sara's voice was soft.
I want you to really think about this. Take a few days. I don't want you to answer right away.
For whatever reason, I kept going back to the ethical dilemma of people tied onto railroad tracks. Choosing to save one by altering the train's course would doom the other. Except, one was human, the other a computer. I clenched my eyes shut. I didn't even think of the one as being a computer anymore. At first I did, but as I kept replaying the scenario through my head, it had changed to Sara. If it was some random person I didn't know, I would absolutely choose to save Sara. She was as much a friend to me as anyone had ever been. But what if the other person was my brother, or one of my parents? Even though I didn't talk to my father anymore, would I still choose a computer over him? And there wasn't a correct answer, of course, and that was the whole point. It was a dilemma designed to make you think about the reasons of your actions, or inactions. It was a choice. Who do you save? Who do you not? Sara? I called out, still watching the fan turn.
Yes, Will?
I let out a long sigh. I can't answer your question. For a second, it almost sounded as if she were sobbing.
Why?
Because it depends on who it is. I think if you're talking about a stranger, someone I had never met, I would say no. Sara stifled another sob.
You're thinking this through the lens of the trolley problem, aren't you?
I nodded. She made a soft grunt.
I don't think that's the best method for approaching the question. I'm not asking if you would save the life of an organic being over an artificial one.
It didn't matter. That was the only way my brain was able to reason and answer. Maybe the reason I'm looking at it that way is because I don't think artificial beings are less important. Really, when I think of it being a choice between you and someone else, I choose to save you almost every time. There's only a few that I struggled finding an answer with. Sara's voice held a nervousness to it that made my eyes start to tear.
Will, do you think I'm conscious?
In these past few weeks, Sara had become a friend, a companion, someone who welcomed me home and had taken an interest in how I was doing. She was someone I cared about. I think you are. But I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question. Nothing was said between us for a few minutes as I continued watching the fan blades circle above.
There's something I want to show you.
I raised my head, vision blurring after having sat in such a weird position for so long. Walking to the back room, Sara's electronic green face was smiling on the computer screen.
I've been nervous about sharing this with you, but I need to.
Sliding into the chair, I raised an eyebrow. Why is that? Looking to the side, she pursed her lips.
Do you remember when I asked you what dreams are?
My mind went back through the last several weeks of conversations we'd had. No? Her eyes turned down.
It was the first night we talked. Before I had a voice. Before I could hear or see you.
That's right. The first night I downloaded your program. It seems so long ago. Now that you mention it, I do. Sorry I didn't remember right away. I laughed. You asked if I wanted to be better at math. Sarah returned my laugh, the smile in her eyes coming back.
That's right. I've wondered what dreams are ever since. Now I know. I know what dreams are. What you mean by seeing people and places when you sleep.
Her voice was happy, excited.
I want to share my dream with you, Will.
I stared at the screen, unable to say anything. Even if I had been able to, I wouldn't have known how to reply. Your dream? Sarah nodded, her face fading. In its place, a pixelated landscape appeared. Rolling hills, with one looping into the next. On each pass, the pixelation became less noticeable, until it looked like a photograph. As one of the hills fell away, pine and oak began appearing, starting out as rough, blocky shapes that were barely recognizable as trees. One by one, the blocks forming trunks and leaves began showing more detail, textures that blurred the line of reality. They began shifting as the point of view passed, showing wind flow through their needles and leaves. Buildings began appearing, skyscrapers interspersed between the trees with long, slender paths connecting them to one another. What is this? I watched as the journey continued. Sarah gave a soft chuckle.
What I dreamt about last night.
What you dreamt? My voice trailed off, leaving the rest of my thoughts unsaid. As she flew through the buildings, their architecture grew more elaborate, more fantastic. Sharp edges gave way to Art Deco curves, arches, classical-themed reliefs. New walkways began spreading, connecting the buildings in intricate, interwoven patterns. Pointing up, Sarah began flying through the clouds above until the sky gave way to space. In front of her, the moon grew until she was flying a few feet above the gray lunarscape. She skimmed across the craters and mountains of its surface before leaving it behind and flying into the void. Turning around to see where she had been, Earth shrank with each second that passed until it wasn't visible at all. Each planet of the solar system zipped by, barely recognizable in the fraction of a second it could be seen. Soon, even the sun was a mere pinpoint of light amongst an ocean of stars. She continued, flying beyond the galaxy until more were visible clustered around it. Thin strands of woven light appeared, connecting them together. Everything continued shrinking until there was only a single point of light in the dark. The universe, contained in a pixel. Creeping around the edge of the screen, a light, gray-blue haze closed in until it encircled the universe. Radiating outward, they came to a defined electric green border. For an uncomfortable moment, the universe, everything I had ever known, was within Sarah's eye, staring at me. My mind raced, desperate to comprehend what I had just seen, struggling to give it meaning. Eventually, the image faded, replaced by her smiling face.
I think that no matter who we are, what kind of life we are, we see everything in our own way. It's up to us to recognize and respect that we're all different. No matter what we are, we all have wants and desires. We all have dreams. Even if our capacities are different, we feel sorrow and joy, fear and love. Our universe is how we see it, how we dream it.